I'm Chloe Davis, 30 years old, and I've always taken pride in being the dependable daughter in our family. So, when my mom called to tell me that my sister Grace's degree ceremony was canceled because she was unwell, I immediately felt concerned. There was something in her voice, a subtle quiver that caught my attention. It was a tone I couldn't ignore, especially with my background in communications. That's when I decided to surprise Grace with some homemade vegetable broth. I drove 1.5 hours from my condo in New York City with the soup sloshing in the passenger seat, not knowing that I would be the one in for a shock. What I discovered that day altered our family forever. But before I dive deeper into the story, where are you tuning in from today? Drop your location in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories about family drama that might make yours seem like a walk in the park. Family has always been my foundation. Growing up in a lively household with my parents, Emma and Jack Davis, and my 3 siblings, Grace, Lily, and Daniel, there was never a dull moment. Our home in suburban Connecticut was always alive with celebrations. So no matter how small the achievement, it was an event. My dad would fire up the barbecue, my mom would bake her famous chocolate cake, and the extended family would gather in our backyard. These moments were sacred in our household. As the firstborn, I naturally stepped into the role of the achiever. I was the first to get perfect grades, the first to join the school soccer team, the first to graduate with honors, and the first to land a high-paying job. My parents were beaming with pride at every milestone, setting a high bar for my younger siblings who sometimes struggled to keep up. To me, it was never about competition, but about leading the way. If they chose to follow my career as a product manager at Peak Strategies in New York City had been both challenging and fulfilling. The promotion to lead product strategist the previous year felt like a dream, even though it meant fewer trips home. The drive back to Connecticut became a monthly occurrence rather than weekly, and with each visit, I noticed small changes in our family dynamics, inside jokes I didn't get, mentions of events I hadn't been a part of, and my bedroom slowly transforming into a guest room. The distance was more than just physical. Was emotional as well. Grace, now 22, had always been the artistic free spirit of the family. While I was busy with my study plans, she was painting murals on her bedroom walls. Whereas I chose a practical marketing degree, she went for art history, with a photography minor. I admired her courage to pursue her passion, even though our dad had serious concerns about her job prospects. Her degree ceremony from the University of Hartford was a triumph, showing that following her heart could lead to success, too. The call from my mom came 2 days prior to the event. I had already bought her a high-end camera as a special present. It's an expensive yet perfect choice to support her photography dreams. I even took the day off from work to help with the party preparations. But when Mom explained that Grace had come down with a terrible illness, fever, sore throat, and the works, I understood immediately that the party was being postponed. "We'll reschedule when she feels better," Mom said, brushing aside my suggestion to come and help her as I prepared the vegetable broth in my apartment that weekend morning. I thought back to when I was a child and my mom would make the same recipe with vegetables and tender chicken. I would make pillow forts in the living room for my siblings while Mom took care of everything. Being the firstborn, I often ended up as the caregiver when our parents were at work. I would read stories to Grace, play games with Lily, and check Daniel's temperature every hour when he was sick. The soup ingredients were not cheap. Sourced from the organic store near my apartment, fresh chicken, herbs, and specialty noodles. Grace deserved the best, and I carefully packed the soup into a cooler bag, cushioning it with towels to prevent any spills during the drive. The journey from New York City to Connecticut was usually my time to unwind, a transition from marketing pro Chloe to just Chloe, a nickname my family used. But today, something felt off. I tried calling Mom again, voicemail, Dad too. Even Lily didn't answer her phone. Only Daniel, who was studying abroad, responded with a casual, "Hope, Grace, feels better." As I neared our neighborhood, something was wrong. Cars lined both sides of Maple Street. My Aunt Carla's SUV, my Uncle Matt's truck, my cousin Olivia's bright red sedan, and at least 12 cars parked along the road. Family and friends had gathered, perhaps, to support Grace through her illness. But that didn't explain the balloons tied to the mailbox blue and gold. University of Hartford colors that danced in the afternoon breeze. I parked a block away, the only space available, and sat for a moment gripping the steering wheel. The soup cooler sat on my passenger seat, suddenly seeming inadequate and naive. Something was very wrong. Or rather, something was very right. Just without me, the weight of the soup cooler pulled at my shoulder as I approached our two-story colonial home. The sound of laughter and music grew louder with each step. Not the subdued atmosphere of a house with a sick resident, but the unmistakable buzz of celebration. Through the large bay window, I glimpsed movement, people mingling, glasses raised, in what appeared to be a toast. My key turned in the lock with the familiar click that had always meant welcome home. But now it felt like I was intruding. The entryway was decorated with photo collages of Grace through the years, everything, from childhood pictures to her senior portraits. A banner hung across the archway leading to the living room. Congratulations, Grace. Class of 2025. The party was in full swing. Grace, supposedly bedridden with fever, was radiant in a sundress, accepting a gift from our grandmother. Mom was arranging a platter of deviled eggs on the dining table adorned with a blue and gold tablecloth. Dad was pouring champagne, and Aunt Carla was adjusting the settings on her camera, preparing to capture another perfect family moment. For several seconds, I stood and noticed an invisible observer at a party I had been told didn't exist. Our living room had been transformed with streamers and balloons. A table in the corner held a pile of wrapped gifts. The Cake Mom's chocolate cake specialty held court at the center of the dining table. Congrats, grad, written in perfect cursive. Frosting. It was Cousin Olivia who noticed me first. Her eyes widened, her champagne flute halting midway to her lips. Like dominoes, awareness of my presence fell across the room. Conversations halted and heads turned. Grace's smile faltered. Dad's champagne bottle froze mid-pour. Mom dropped a deviled egg. Chloe. Mom's voice was too bright, too surprised. What are you doing here, sweetheart? The silence that followed her question was deafening. 30 pairs of eyes watched me, waiting for my reaction. The cooler bag suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000. LBs, I brought soup, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. For Grace's fever. Grace had the decency to look mortified, her gaze dropping to her sandaled feet. Dad busied himself with wiping non-existent spills from the champagne bottle. It was Mom who attempted damage control, approaching me with arms outstretched, as though to hug me, a gesture I subtly avoided. Oh, honey, there was a change of plans. Grace recovered so quickly we decided to go ahead with the party rather than reschedule. I tried calling you this morning, but it went straight to voicemail. We assumed you were in that important meeting you mentioned. The lie was so transparent it was almost insulting. I had mentioned no meeting. My phone showed no missed calls, and the elaborate decorations around me had clearly not been assembled that morning. Really? I managed, my marketing trained, smile firmly in place. How fortunate that Grace made such a miraculous recovery and everyone was able to attend on such short notice. A few uncomfortable glances were exchanged among relatives. Aunt Carla murmured something to Uncle Matt, who frowned and shook his head. I distinctly heard her whisper, "I told you she shouldn't find out." The realization crashed over me like ice water. This wasn't a miscommunication. This wasn't a last-minute change of plans. This was deliberate. They had intentionally told me the party was canceled because they didn't want me there. Mac, I'm really glad you came, Grace. Stepped forward, her voice small. The insincerity was palpable. No one was glad I had come. I had disrupted their perfect party, the one they had carefully planned to exclude me from. Would you like some champagne? Dad offered, clearly desperate to normalize the situation. We're just about to do the toasts. I need to use the bathroom. I said, placing the soup cooler on the entry table. Excuse me? As I walked through the crowd, relatives parted like the Red Sea, offering tight smiles and awkward hellos. I caught fragments of whispered conversations. I thought she was working, Mom said. She wouldn't come, Lily added. Always. So intense. The bathroom had been my refuge during childhood family gatherings when the noise and chaos became overwhelming. Now it felt like my only escape from the suffocating reality of their secrets. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, trying to steady my breathing. The face in the mirror looked composed, but my eyes betrayed the hurt churning inside. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Are you okay? I'm so sorry. Sorry that I found out. Or sorry that they had excluded me in the first place. As I splashed cold water on my face, my phone buzzed again with notifications. Suddenly, curious, I opened my social media apps. There it was, evidence that this deception went deeper than just a single party. Instagram stories from Lily showed family dinners from weekends I had been told everyone was too busy for. Facebook posts from Mom revealed a Christmas cookie baking day I'd never heard about. Even Daniel, from abroad, had been looped in via video calls to gatherings I knew. Nothing about the bathroom suddenly felt suffocating. I needed answers. I needed to understand why my family, the people I loved most in the world, had decided I was someone they wanted to celebrate without. My hands trembled slightly as I scrolled through more social media posts, each one a fresh paper cut to my heart. But it was the notification of a text from Grace that truly unraveled me. When I opened it, I realized she had accidentally sent me a message meant for the family group chat, a group I was evidently not part of. Is Max still in the bathroom? What do we do now? Curious and increasingly hurt, I searched my phone for any group conversations and found nothing with my entire family included. On a hunch, I opened Mom's phone, which she had left charging in the bathroom. Using the passcode that hadn't changed since I was in high school, 1987, the year she and Dad got married. There it was. Walker family, everyone included, except me. I scrolled up, hands shaking. 2 weeks ago, remember? As far as Mackenzie knows, we're postponing Grace's graduation party because of illness. Dad, I don't feel right about this. Grace, it's just one day, Dad. One celebration without walking. On eggshells. Lily, Max is going to find out eventually. Ain't Carla? Nancy? Thomas? I think you should just be honest with her. Mom, it's easier this way. Mac has been so busy with work anyway. She probably won't mind missing one family gathering. The messages continued, discussing party plans. Who would bring what dishes? And the gift they had all contributed to a weekend photography workshop in New York that I had apparently been excluded from funding as well. The bathroom door rattled with a soft knock. Mac, are you okay in there? Mom's concerned voice carried through the wood. The same voice that had lied to me without hesitation just days earlier. I opened the door. Her phone extended in my palm, the group chat visible on the screen. Her face collapsed like a souffle, removed from the oven too soon. You weren't supposed to see that, she whispered, clearly horrified. I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded despite the earthquake happening inside me. Why, Mom? Why would you all do this? She guided me to her bedroom across the hall, away from the party that had resumed its cheerful hum after the initial shock of my arrival. The familiar floral bedspread and family photos on the walls felt like artifacts from a life I no longer recognized. Mac, she began, perching on the edge of the bed. It's complicated. Grace specifically asked if just once we could celebrate her accomplishment without it becoming about you. The words hit like physical blows. About me. How would Grace's graduation become about me? Mom's hands twisted in her lap. You have to understand, sweetheart. When you're in a room, you take up all the oxygen. Not intentionally, I know that. But you have such a strong personality. You ask Grace about her job prospects. You question her choices. You give unsolicited advice. We love how passionate and driven you are, but sometimes, especially at celebrations, I finished flatly. No, no, that's not what I'm saying, she replied, but her eyes told a different story. It's just that your siblings have always felt they live in your shadow. You are always so accomplished, so perfect. If you attend family functions, you dominate conversations. You correct people. You turn simple discussions into debates. We're all a little intimidated by you. The door opened and Dad entered. His tall frame stooped under the burden of the situation. I heard you found out, he said unnecessarily. I wanted to tell you the truth from the beginning, he continued. But you didn't, I pointed out. He sighed heavily. No, I didn't. I'm sorry, Mac. Dad says I intimidate everyone with my perfectionism. I looked to Mom. Is that true? She nodded slowly. You're very critical, honey, of yourself and others. We never know if what we're doing meets your standards. So, instead of talking to me about this, you all decided to just exclude me, create a separate family group without me. Lie to me. The silence that followed her words was answer enough. Can I talk to Grace? I asked. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. She's pretty upset right now, Dad said. Finding out you discovered our plan has kind of ruined her party. The irony was almost too much to bear. Even now, my feelings were secondary to maintaining the celebration I'd been deliberately excluded from. I see, said, standing up. Well, I wouldn't want to ruin things any further. Chloe, please don't leave like this, Mom pleaded. Stay, have some cake, open a dialogue with your sister. But Grace appeared in the doorway, her graduation cap now perched on her dark curls, her eyes narrowing. It's fine if she leaves, Mom. That's why we didn't invite her in the first place, Grace's dad admonished. No, let her speak, I said, surprisingly calm despite the vice grip of pain around my heart. I want to hear the truth. Grace crossed her arms, her posture defensive. The truth is, I wanted one day, just one day, where I didn't feel like I was being evaluated and found wanting. Where people celebrated my accomplishment without hearing about how you graduated with honors. Or how you had 3 job offers right out of college. Where I could show my photography without you suggesting improvements. Or I could just be Grace, not Chloe's little sister who chose the impractical degree. Each word was a revelation. Had I really been so blind to how my sister saw me? Had my attempts to help and support been received as criticism and competition? I never meant to make you feel that way, I said softly. I know, Grace replied, her voice gentler now. That almost makes it worse. You don't even realize you're doing it. With perfect timing, Lily appeared behind Grace. The natives are getting restless out there, she said, then noticed the tension. Oh, family meeting without me. Apparently, I'm the only one who gets excluded from family meetings, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Lily at least had the grace to look ashamed. I voted to tell you the truth, she offered weakly. But you still participated in the lie, I pointed out. All of you did. The weight of betrayal pressed down on me from all sides. The people I trusted most in the world had conspired to exclude me, had created a shadow family that functioned without me. They had told me I was too much, too intense, too perfect, too critical. I think I need some air, I managed, moving toward the door. Mac, Mom reached for my arm. Let's talk this through. I gently removed her hand. I've heard enough for now. As I walked through the party toward the front door, relatives pretended not to watch. Some looked guilty, others curious. A few even seemed satisfied that the family drama they'd anticipated was unfolding on schedule. I retrieved my soup cooler from the entry table. The organic chicken and imported noodles now felt like a ridiculous gesture of care for someone who hadn't even been sick. The irony wasn't lost on me. You're leaving, Cousin Olivia asked as I passed her. But they're about to cut the cake. I wasn't invited in the first place, I replied, not breaking stride. Joy the party, the spring. Sunshine felt mockingly cheerful as I walked to my car. The sounds of the party already resumed behind me. Someone had turned the music up. Perhaps to cover the tension of my departure, my phone began buzzing with texts from Mom, from Dad, from Lily Nunn, from Grace. I placed the soup cooler on the passenger seat, put on my sunglasses to hide the tears gathering in my eyes, and drove away from the home that had suddenly become foreign territory, the familiar streets of my childhood. Neighborhood blurred through my tears as I drove aimlessly, eventually finding myself at Callahan State Park, where I'd spent countless summer days as a child. I parked near the pond and sat motionless, hands still gripping the steering wheel, trying to process the emotional tsunami that had just crashed through my life. My phone continued its relentless buzzing. A glance showed 15 messages and 7 missed calls from various family members, everyone except Grace. I silenced it and tossed it onto the passenger seat next to the ridiculous soup cooler. The afternoon sun dappled through the trees. But it felt far too cold to be comforting as I finally left the car and wandered to a secluded bench overlooking the water. This very spot had witnessed so many Davis family picnics, birthday celebrations, and 4th of July gatherings. Now, it felt like neutral territory where I could lick my wounds in private. The revelations kept hitting me in waves. I was too critical. I dominated conversations. I made everything about myself. I intimidated my family. I cast a shadow my siblings couldn't escape. These weren't accusations from enemies, but testimonials from the people who supposedly loved me most. Had I really been so blind? I thought back to Grace's high school graduation 4 years ago. I'd been so proud when she announced her acceptance to the University of Hartford with a scholarship. Had I overshadowed that moment when I mentioned the alumni networking events I could connect her with? When I'd suggested courses that would complement her art history major with more practical skills? A memory surfaced of Thanksgiving 2 years ago. I'd corrected Dad's retelling of a historical fact during dinner. It had seemed harmless, just setting the record straight. But now I recalled how the conversation had died afterward. How he'd stopped his story mid-sentence. Then there was Lily's 25th birthday last year. I'd helped Mom plan it, taking charge of decorations and activities. Thought I was being helpful, but had I actually hijacked the celebration? Had my suggestions for a sophisticated wine tasting instead of the bowling night Lily initially wanted been another example of imposing my standards? Even small interactions took on new meaning. The way conversations sometimes halted when I entered a room, how my siblings exchanged glances when I offered advice, Mom's tight smile when I rearranged her kitchen cabinets more efficiently during visits. My phone buzzed again with a text. This one was from Daniel, who'd apparently been informed of the situation from his study abroad program in Germany. What the hell happened? Mom's freaking out. Unlike the others, I opened his message and replied. They threw Grace a graduation party after telling me it was canceled. Apparently, I'm too intense to be included in family functions now. Response came quickly. What? I'm calling you. When the phone rang, I answered with a tearful, "Hey, Mac, I had no idea." Daniel's voice was clear, despite the international connection. "I knew about the party, but Mom told me you couldn't make it because of work." "Another lie," I said flatly. "They have a whole separate family group chat without me, Daniel. They've been having gatherings and not telling me for months." He was quiet for a moment. "I've been included in those calls and chats from Germany, but I had no idea you were being deliberately excluded." "That's messed up. Why didn't you ever mention these gatherings to me?" I asked. His hesitation spoke volumes. I assumed you knew and were just too busy or not interested." "Not interested in family? When have I ever given that impression?" Daniel sighed. "Look, Mac, you're my big sister and I love you, but you can be a lot sometimes." "Not you too," I groaned. "I'm just being honest. You've always been the star of the family. The smartest, the most successful, the one with all the answers. Do you have any idea what it's like growing up as your younger brother? It's teachers. constantly saying, "Oh, you're Chloe Davis's brother." She was such an exceptional student. The pain in his voice was unmistakable and achingly familiar, the same tone Grace had used. But that's not my fault. I protested weakly. "No, it's not," he agreed. "But the way you handle it might be. You're always fixing, always improving, always pushing. Sometimes we just want to be accepted as we are, flaws and all. So your solution was to create a shadow family without me. Ah. To lie and exclude me? Ah. I didn't know they were doing that," he insisted. "That was wrong and I would have said so. But Mac, can you try to understand why Grace might have wanted one celebration that wasn't filtered through your lens of perfection?" The question hung between us, forcing me to confront uncomfortable truths. Had my attempts to help actually been perceived as criticism? Had my achievements become a burden to those I loved most? "I don't know what to do with this," I admitted, watching a family of ducks glide across the pond's surface. "I feel betrayed and misunderstood and like I don't even know who I am anymore." "You're still Mac," he said gently. "You're just finding out that the way you see yourself isn't exactly how others see you. That's hard, but it's also an opportunity." An opportunity for what? Growth? Connection? Real understanding? He paused. "Look, what they did was wrong, completely wrong. But maybe instead of, Chloe, cutting ties or blowing up at them, you could use this as a chance to reset the family dynamic." After we hung up, I sat, watching the ducks, considering my options. I could drive back to New York City, shut out my family, and nurse my wounds in private. I could return to the party and create a scene, making sure everyone knew how hurt I was. Or I could find another way, a response they wouldn't expect. The sun was setting by the time I made my decision. I checked into a hotel near my parents' house, not ready to make the 2-hour drive back to New York City in my emotional state. I called my best friend Diana, who listened with appropriate outrage to my story, but then asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Have you ever considered that there might be some truth to what they're saying?" ET2, Diana. I sighed, flopping back on the hotel bed. "I'm your best friend, Chloe, which means I tell you the truth, even when it hurts. You're brilliant and driven and passionate about everything you do. But sometimes, and I say this with love, you can be a bit of a steamroller." A steamroller? Seriously? Remember my housewarming party? "You reorganized my entire bookshelf while helping me set up, and then explained to my other guests why your system was more logical." The memory made me cringe. "I was just trying to help," I said. "I know you were. You're always trying to help, but sometimes help isn't what people want. Sometimes they just want presence without improvement suggestions." After hanging up, I spent hours researching family psychology and communication patterns on my laptop. Articles about family roles, about eldest child syndrome, about perfectionism and its impact on relationships. I took notes, examined patterns, and gradually formed a plan. By morning, I had a strategy, one that would force honest communication without creating more damage. I visited 3 stores before finding everything I needed. As I loaded supplies into my car, I felt a strange mixture of determination, anxiety, and hope. Whatever happened next would change our family dynamic forever. But maybe, just maybe, it could change it for the better. The hotel room became my war room as I spread out my purchases and organized my thoughts. Multicolored sticky notes covered the desk and part of the wall as I mapped out family patterns, key conversations, and potential outcomes. Diana had stayed on the phone with me until 2 a.m., helping me refine my approach and reminding me to breathe when anger or hurt threatened to derail my planning. This isn't about revenge, I reminded myself as I arranged art supplies and communication exercises I'd printed from psychology websites. This is about healing. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a small part of me that relished the thought of their surprise when I returned calm and prepared rather than broken or furious. They thought they knew me so well, had me so neatly categorized as the perfectionist, the steamroller, the intensity they needed a break from. They had no idea what was coming. My phone had finally stopped its constant buzzing around midnight. The last message had been from Mom. "Please let us know you're safe. We're worried about you." I'd responded with a simple, "I'm safe. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Please make sure everyone is there." Her immediate reply, "Of course, anything you need," carried the desperate relief of someone who'd expected much worse. As morning approached, I showered and dressed carefully in casual clothes, jeans and a soft blue sweater. Nothing like the polished business attire my family associated with me. I wanted to be comfortable for what would likely be an emotionally exhausting day. But I also wanted to visually signal that this was a different Chloe than they were used. At the supermarket, I filled my cart with breakfast ingredients: eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, bread for toasting, orange juice, and good coffee. If we were going to have an intense family therapy session, we might as well be well fed. The cashier chatted cheerfully as she rang up my items. "Big family breakfast." "Something like that," I replied. More of a family intervention." "Actually?" She looked startled, then laughed, assuming I was joking. "Well, bacon makes everything better." "Let's hope so," I murmured, swiping my credit card. As I drove the familiar route to my parents' house, I rehearsed what I would say, trying to find words that expressed my hurt without attacking, that acknowledged their perspective while standing up for myself. The communication books I'd skimmed emphasized I statements rather than accusations. Active listening and creating safe spaces for honest dialogue. It all sounded good in theory. But these weren't strangers or colleagues. They were the people who had known me my entire life and had still decided I wasn't someone they wanted at their celebration. The wound was deep and personal in a way that made it difficult for me to articulate. Words seemed inadequate to address how I felt. The street was quiet as I pulled up to the house at precisely 9 a.m. Only the family cars remained in the driveway, the party guests long gone. I gathered my bags of food and supplies, took a deep breath, and approached the front door. This time, I rang the doorbell instead of using my small but deliberate choice to acknowledge that I wasn't sure of my place in this home anymore. Mom opened the door, her face showing evidence of a sleepless night. "Chloe," she breathed, moving to hug me. I stepped back slightly, shifting my bags. "I need to put these in the kitchen." Her arms dropped. "Of course," she moved aside, allowing me to enter. The house had been cleaned, all evidence of yesterday's party erased, except for a vase of congratulatory flowers on the hall table. I could hear muted voices from the kitchen, the family assembled as requested. The nervous energy was palpable as I walked in. Dad sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee cooling untouched before him. Grace occupied a stool at the counter, eyes red and puffy. Lily leaned against the refrigerator, arms crossed defensively. They all looked up as I entered, conversations halting mid-sentence. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady as I placed my bags on the counter. I brought breakfast, exchanged confused glances, clearly having expected either a confrontation or a tearful reconciliation attempt. "Not grocery bags," and my carefully neutral tone. "Mac, we need to talk about yesterday," Dad began. "We will," I assured him, unpacking eggs and bacon. "But first, we're going to eat. Then we're going to do something important together." "What are we doing?" Lily asked cautiously. I pulled out the art supplies, communication worksheets, and family therapy exercises I'd printed. "We're going to have an honest conversation. Maybe for the first time ever." Their expressions ranged from skepticism to apprehension to, in Grace's case, something that looked almost like relief. "I need all of you to promise me something." I continued, meeting each pair of eyes directly. "For the next few hours, we will be completely honest with each other. No holding back to spare feelings. No walking away when it gets difficult. No deflecting with humor or changing the subject. Can you do that?" The silence stretched uncomfortably before Dad finally nodded. Yes, we can do that. One by one, the others agreed. We worked together to prepare breakfast, a strange silent dance of passing utensils and ingredients. The familiar routine of cooking offered a temporary reprieve from the tension-neutral activity to occupy our hands while our minds raced with unspoken thoughts as we sat down to eat. I placed a stack of colored index cards in the center of the table. We're going to start simple, I explained. After breakfast, each of us will write down 3 things. Something we appreciate about each family member, something that frustrates us about them, and something we've never told them but think they should know. Is this really necessary? Grace asked, pushing eggs around her plate. Can't we just talk? We've tried just talking for 28 years, I pointed out. It's led us here to secret family chats and excluded members. I think we need a new approach. She had no response to that. As we ate, I shared what I'd learned during my night of research about family systems, about how roles become entrenched, about how the stories we tell ourselves about who we are in a family often prevent us from truly seeing each other. I've always thought of myself as the supportive big sister, I admitted, the achiever who was blazing a trail for all of you. It never occurred to me that you might see me as critical or overwhelming. I paused, vulnerable in my honesty. That's partly why yesterday hurt so much. It wasn't just being excluded. It was realizing that the story I've been telling myself about my place in this family is completely different from how you all see me. Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We love you, Chloe. That's never been in question. Love isn't enough, I replied gently. Not if we can't be honest with each other. Not if some of you feel you need protection. From me, we finished eating in thoughtful silence as I gathered the plates. I felt a strange sense of calm. Whatever happened next would be difficult, possibly painful, but necessary. The family that emerged from this day would either be stronger for its honesty or would at least know where it stood. I distributed the index cards and pens, then set a timer on my phone. 20 minutes, complete honesty. Let's see what we discover about each other. The kitchen table had been cleared of breakfast dishes and now displayed a colorful array of art supplies, markers, colored pencils, construction paper, and modeling clay. My family eyed these materials with confusion as I laid out the communication worksheets I'd prepared. Is this your surprise? Lily asked, picking up a purple marker with skepticism. Arts and crafts. Not exactly, I replied, taking my seat at the head of the table, a position I'd never occupied in our family gatherings. The surprise is that instead of the dramatic exit or angry confrontation you were expecting, we're going to spend today doing something that should have happened years ago. I placed the stack of completed index cards in the center of the table. During our 20 minutes of writing, the kitchen had been silent except for the scratch of pens against paper. Now those cards held truths we'd never spoken aloud, appreciations, frustrations, and secrets we'd kept from each other. I'd like to start by acknowledging what happened yesterday, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions churning beneath the surface. I discovered that my family has been deliberately excluding me from gatherings, created a separate group chat without me, and lied about Grace's graduation party specifically to keep me away. Mom shifted uncomfortably. Dad stared at his hands. Grace bit her lip. Those are the facts, I continued. Now I want to understand why not, with accusations or defensiveness, but with genuine curiosity. Because something is broken in how we relate to each other, and we can either fix it together or accept that our family will never be what I thought it was. I picked up the first worksheet, a simple family mapping exercise. Let's start by drawing how we each see our family structure. Who holds power? Who supports whom? How do we communicate? Draw it however makes sense to you. For 10 minutes, we worked silently. My diagram showed me somewhat separated from the core family circle, reaching in with multiple hands labeled help, advice, support, all well-intentioned connections. that I now realized might have been experienced as intrusions. When we shared our drawings, the revelations were immediate and powerful. Mom had drawn herself at the center, connected to everyone but with thicker lines of communication between her and each family member than between the siblings themselves. Dad showed a more traditional hierarchy, with himself and Mom at the top. Lily depicted her and Grace huddled together with Daniel floating nearby and me positioned above everyone else, as if on a different plane. But it was Grace's drawing that brought the first tears to my eyes. She'd drawn me as the sun large bright, and dominant with the rest of the family as much smaller planets orbiting at a distance, their features partially in shadow. Is that really how you see me? I asked softly. Grace nodded, not meeting. My eyes? You've always been so bright, so sure of yourself and your opinions. The rest of us are just trying not to get burned. The metaphor hit hard. I'd never thought of my confidence and drive as something that cast others in shadow or held them at a distance. Let's move to the appreciation cards. I suggested needing something positive to balance the weight of this revelation. We'll each read what others wrote about us. This exercise brought smiles and a lightening of the atmosphere. Learning that Dad appreciated my fearless approach to challenges and that Lily admired how I always stand up for what I believe helped soothe some of the hurt. Even Grace had written that she respected my work ethic and wished she had my confidence. But the real breakthrough came with the frustration cards. As we took turns reading what frustrated others about us, patterns emerged that none of us had fully recognized. It frustrates me that Chloe treats every conversation like a debate to be won. I read from Dad's card about me. It frustrates me that Chloe always has to improve everything instead of just enjoying the moment. Came from Lily, Dot, and from Grace. It frustrates me that Chloe pushes me to be more than I want to be, and I just want to be accepted as I am. It frustrates me that Chloe never just listens without offering solutions. The consistency was undeniable. In their eyes, I wasn't just passionate and driven. I was overwhelming and relentless in my pursuit of improvement, of optimization, of perfection. But they weren't exempt from patterns either. Each of them received feedback about conflict avoidance, about talking about people instead of to them, about passive-aggressive behaviors that prevented direct communication. Mom, I read from my card about her. It frustrates me that you manage family relationships by controlling information, telling different things to different people to avoid conflict, instead of bringing issues into the open. She flinched but nodded in acknowledgement. That's fair. As the morning progressed, we moved through the exercises I'd prepared. We practiced active listening, repeating back what we heard without immediately responding or defending. We created role maps, identifying the parts we each played in family dynamics. Me as the perfectionist and fixer. Mom as the peacekeeper. Dad as the conflict avoider. Lily as the mediator. Grace as the free spirit who used emotional outbursts when she felt unheard. And Daniel as the diplomat who maintained individual relationships with everyone while staying out of the fray. The most powerful moment came during an exercise called Speaking from the Shadows, where we each shared something we felt was unacceptable or invisible in our family. Grace went first, her voice small but determined. I've spent my entire life feeling like a pale imitation of Chloe. No matter what I accomplish, it never seems quite enough compared to her. When I decided to study art history, Dad asked 3 times if I was sure about my job prospects. When Mac chose marketing, everyone just nodded like it was exactly right. I wanted one celebration, just one, where I didn't feel like I was being measured against her accomplishments. Her honesty opened the floodgates. Dad admitted feeling intellectually intimidated by me since high school, afraid of being corrected or appearing uninformed. Mom confessed that she sometimes avoided telling me about family problems because my solutions, while practical, rarely accounted for people's emotions. Lily revealed that she'd changed her college major 3 times, partly because she was trying to find something that would be her domain, distinct from my achievements. When my turn came, I took a deep breath. I've always felt like the family workhorse valued for what I contribute, for solving problems, for achieving milestones, but not necessarily for who I am. I drove myself to excel because that seemed to be my role, my value. And now I've learned that the very things I thought made me useful to this family are the things that make you want to exclude me. The tears I've been holding back finally spilled over. Do you have any idea how much it hurts to discover that your family has a separate life without you? That they actively create events where you're not welcome? That the people you love most in the world find you so overwhelming they need breaks from your presence? No one spoke, but Mom reached for my hand across the table. This time, I didn't pull away. I'm not perfect, I continued, wiping my eyes. I'm driven and intense, and yes, sometimes I steamroll over people's feelings in my rush to solve problems, but I deserved better than lies and exclusion. We all deserved better than the dynamic we've created. By mid-afternoon, the kitchen table was covered with worksheets, cards, drawings, and tissues. We were emotionally exhausted, but had reached a new understanding of our family system. The truth, painful as it was, had finally been spoken aloud. So, what now? Dad asked, his voice weary from hours of difficult conversation. I gathered the contract for change worksheets I'd prepared. Now we make commitments to each other. Specific behaviors we'll each work on, boundaries we'll respect, and new ways of communicating. And we agreed to hold each other accountable with love, not punishment or exclusion. So we filled out our commitment sheets. I realized that this honest, raw, difficult day was the real surprise I'd brought them. Not a dramatic exit, not a tearful plea for inclusion, not a rage-filled confrontation, but a structured space for truth-telling. That would fundamentally change how we related to each other. Grace looked up from her worksheet, meeting my eyes directly for the first time since I'd arrived. I'm sorry, Mac. We should have just talked to you instead of excluding you. And I'm sorry I've been so overwhelming that you felt you couldn't, replied. We've all contributed to this dynamic. Now we all have to change it. By evening, we were emotionally spent but had reached a fragile new understanding. We ordered pizza rather than cooking and ate in the living room. Physically and emotionally more relaxed than we'd been in years. We weren't fixed not by a long shot, but we had finally seen each other clearly. Perhaps for the first time, as I prepared to leave, Grace approached me with a tentative smile. Will you come to my rescheduled degree ceremony next weekend? A real one, with you included from the start. I'd like that, I said, hugging her gently. And I promise to just celebrate you. No advice, no improvements, no taking over. She hugged me back. And I promise to tell you directly if I'm feeling overshadowed instead of excluding you. It wasn't a perfect resolution. Real family healing never is. But it was an honest beginning. And that was the greatest surprise of all. 2 months after what we now refer to as the intervention, I found myself back at my parents' house for Grace's rescheduled degree celebration. This time, the invitation had come directly from my sister via a group text that included all of us, our newly formed family chat, where open communication was the explicit goal. The backyard was decorated simply but beautifully. String lights hung from trees, creating a warm glow as evening approached. A table displayed Grace's photography portfolio alongside her diploma. The atmosphere was relaxed, a stark contrast to the tense, overproduced event I'd crashed months earlier. You made it. Grace greeted me with a genuine smile, accepting my hug without the stiffness that had characterized our interactions for years. Wouldn't miss it. Ha replied, handing her a carefully wrapped package. Congratulations, truly. She opened it to find a leather-bound journal inside, for capturing your thoughts along with your images. Your perspective matters. Always. Love, Mac. No fancy camera accessories or career advice. She teased, but her eyes were warm. Nope, just something to support your journey wherever it takes you. We'd both been working on our commitments from the intervention. For me, that meant consciously stepping back, asking questions instead of offering solutions and recognizing when my help wasn't helpful. For Grace, it meant direct communication instead of resentful withdrawal. And acknowledging her own role in our dynamic, Mom approached with a plate of appetizers. "Try these, Mac." I followed that recipe sent, but I added my own twist with the seasoning. This small comment represented significant growth, Mom, acknowledging my input while asserting her own creativity, me accepting her adaptation without suggesting improvements. Small steps, but meaningful ones. The past 2 months had been filled with such moments as we collectively rewrote our family script. Individual conversations had been particularly important in healing specific relationships. With Dad, I'd had a breakthrough during a Saturday. Morning spent fixing his car together, so we worked side by side. He admitted how intimidated he'd felt by my intellect since I was a teenager. "You started correcting my facts when you were about 15, he'd confessed, handing me a wrench. "Do you know how strange it is to have your child become more knowledgeable than you?" I was proud, but also, I don't know, diminished somehow, he admitted. "I never meant to diminish you," I'd replied, understanding for the first time how my constant corrections had affected him. "I think I was just trying to impress you." The irony hadn't been lost on either of us, trying to earn approval through intellectual dominance while he interpreted it as criticism. We both laughed, and something long dormant between us began to loosen. With Lily, healing had come through vulnerability. During a sister's lunch, I'd finally asked about the college major changes she'd mentioned during the intervention. "I really switched because of you," I'd asked, pained by the thought that she'd considered that carefully before answering. "Not because of you exactly," she'd said, "but because of who I felt I needed to be around you. You have such strong opinions, Mac. When I chose business administration, you immediately sent me articles about which concentrations had the best job prospects. Okay? When I switched to communications, you connected me with your colleague for guidance. Bitch, you were trying to help, but it felt like you didn't trust me to figure things out myself." That conversation had led to a new agreement between us. She would ask directly for my input when she wanted it, and I would offer support without direction unless specifically requested. Even Daniel, returning from Germany, had been incorporated into our healing process through video calls, and his own. Last month, as the family diplomat, Daniel had shared valuable insights into how we all contributed to our dysfunctional patterns. Now, watching my family move around the backyard, Mom chatting with neighbors, Dad grilling with uncharacteristic relaxation, Lily and Grace setting up a projector for a slideshow of Grace's college photos, I felt a profound sense of change. We weren't perfect, and we still occasionally slipped into old patterns. But we were consciously creating something healthier. Grace approached me with 2 glasses of wine, offering one to me. "I've been thinking about what you said during the intervention about feeling valued for what you do, rather than who you are." I accepted the glass with a nod. It's been my pattern for so long. I'm still learning to just exist without constantly producing or improving things. "I get that now," she said, gazing at her photography display. After graduation, everyone kept asking about job applications and career plans. It was suffocating. For the first time, I understood a little bit of what it must be like to be you having everyone's expectations on your shoulders. The comparison surprised me. "I never thought you'd see any parallels between us," she laughed. "Me neither, but here we are." She clinked her glass against mine, to being works in progress. Later, as we gathered around the table for dinner, I observed the subtle changes in our family dynamic. Conversations flowed more naturally, with space for everyone's voice. When Dad started to dominate a discussion about politics, Mom gently redirected rather than silently building resentment. When I began offering unsolicited advice about Grace's job search, she kindly but firmly said, "I'm not looking for solutions right now, just support." And I was able to step back without feeling rejected. These were small victories, but significant ones. The shadow family that had existed without me was gone, replaced by a more honest, more complete unit. The painful betrayal had ultimately led to something better than what we'd had before. After dessert, Mom raised her glass. "I'd like to propose a toast. To Grace's graduation, of course, but also to new beginnings. The last few months haven't been easy. But I believe we're building a stronger family because of the hard conversations we've had." And to Chloe, Grace added unexpectedly, "For having the courage to call us out on our behavior and then create a path forward instead of just walking away. That workshop or intervention or whatever you want to call it was exactly what we needed." I felt tears prick my eyes as glasses were raised in my direction. The journey from excluded family member to catalyst for change had been painful, but profoundly transformative. As the evening wound down and guests departed, I found myself alone on the back porch swing with a sleepy contentment I hadn't felt in years. Grace joined me, wrapping a light blanket around our shoulders against the evening chill. "Remember when we used to sit out here during thunderstorms?" she asked. "You always explained the science behind lightning and thunder." I winced slightly. Was I insufferable even then? She nudged my shoulder. "No, actually, I loved those explanations. They made something scary feel understandable." She paused. "I think that's the difference I'm learning to see in you. There are times when your knowledge is a gift, freely given, and times when it's a correction that isn't needed. I wasn't good at distinguishing between them before, and I wasn't good at recognizing which one I was offering." I admitted. We swung in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds and the muted conversations still happening inside. "Do you think we'll slip back into old patterns?" she finally asked. "Probably," sometimes, I answered honestly. "But now we have tools to recognize it and vocabulary to talk about it, and hopefully enough love to be patient with each other through the process." The deep lesson of the past months had crystallized for me. True family connection requires not just love, but courage. The courage to be imperfectly seen, to acknowledge hard truths, to remain open even after betrayal. Healing isn't a single moment of reconciliation, but an ongoing practice of choosing authenticity over comfort. My family had excluded me because they couldn't handle my intensity. I had steamrolled them because I didn't recognize their experience of me. Both sides had failed each other, but both sides had also found the courage to build something better from the wreckage. As Grace and I rejoined the others inside to help clean up, the contrast between this gathering and the party I'd crashed 2 months ago couldn't have been clearer. That event had been built on lies and exclusion. This one was founded on honesty and inclusion, messier perhaps. Less perfect, certainly, but infinitely more real. The surprise I'd given my family wasn't just the intervention itself, but the mirror it had held up to all of us, reflecting both our failures and our capacity for growth. None of us would forget it, and all of us were better for it.